Mind, Body, Spirit, Part 4. Programs, Conditioning, and Life Patterns. Welcome to this video where we're going to be diving deep into who you are, what runs you. And this is going to be a very juice-filled episode because we're really going to start peeling back the layers here of how you came to be the person that you are today. How it is that you have become this collection of habits, behaviors, beliefs, values, loops, patterns, things that you do at an unconscious level you're not even aware of, and where that all comes from. Because what it's resulting in is everything you see in your life today. The state of your money, your career, your relationships, your physical health and fitness, all of this begins with your programming, your conditioning, and leads to your life patterns, the cyclical events and situations that you keep finding yourself in for one reason or another. We're going to be looking at how that happens and how you can change it so that it starts working for you instead of against you. See, most people, and I spend so much of my life doing this, have their programming and their conditioning working against them through the way that they're raised, through culture, through society, religion, political information, all bombarding us, advertising, music, all bombarding us with conditioning, with programs, which are subtly suggesting that we do certain things, that we act a certain way so that we can get a certain result. And it's not happening on the level of, if you act like this, you will get all this money and fame. It's happening on an unconscious level. That's the trick of it. That's the subtlety of it, which most people miss. So get ready for an exciting episode. So first of all, we're going to be looking at how this process unfolds in the average human life, okay? So as we've looked at before, your true nature begins here. Spirit, right? Pure potential, pristine, infinite, unlimited spirit. And then what does spirit do? Spirit decides it is going to have a human experience. So it drops into a little human embryo and a human being begins. Now, in this state, spirit is actually becoming something like a seed, right? At that first point of conception. And what I mean by that is, in a similar way that an oak tree has all of its genetic material, all of its ingredients for everything that oak tree could possibly be, it's all contained in the seed at the very beginning. And it's the same for you. All of your potential, all of your artistic ability, your musical ability, your creative, your technical, your communication, your personality traits, all of it is implied at the very beginning in this seed state. And so what happens is, this seed has two fundamental drives, right? Two fundamental drives. The first one is survival. The most important thing that this seed needs to establish is survival. It can't grow unless it's safe, unless it's in a pristine environment where it can begin to unfold itself. Number two, its second agenda is expansion. These are the two driving forces of this seed, which is your soul at the very beginning. Now, what begins to happen as time moves on is this seed starts to unfold. And we see this in the womb as you're developing, as the embryo begins to develop. What's happening is this thing starts to unfold itself. Or a similar situation, if you put a little seed in a jar and put some water in there, over a few days, what you're going to see is that seed begins to expand and unfold. And so all of this energy that's here at the beginning is also starting to unfold and express itself. And you begin to see all these different colors coming online, expanding out of the original seed. So as this is happening, we've already seen the seed is paying attention. Your soul, your unconscious mind is paying attention to two things. Number one, survival. Number two, expansion. In order to survive and expand, this seed has to begin to adapt to its environment, right? And again, if we're looking at a seed, a real seed from a plant, this seed actually has millions and millions of sensors detecting what's happening in its environment, whether how much heat there is, how much light there is, how much sound there is, how much shade, moisture. All of these little sensors, genetic scientists will tell us, are picking up information from the environment, determining if it's a safe environment in which it can develop and unfold. Now, as this is all happening, as this seed begins to expand and unfold, what we see is certain developmental stages, right? And these stages happen progressively. We looked at this in the last video where we saw that the tower, which is a metaphor for the soul, this tower which we live in all of our lives, we start on the bottom floor, right? In that little red box, in the little red story, and we begin to evolve and grow through these different levels. That is basically what's happening here. So, spirit in the middle begins to expand, move outwards. The seed is unfolding and starting to express itself, and we're moving through these different levels and stages of development. Now, what is important about this unfolding process is that you can't skip any levels. I touched on that in the last video. So on this level, where, for example, the baby is learning to crawl, that's a baby learning to crawl, it is unable to move to the walking stage. This is just common knowledge of how we develop. This baby can't develop to the walking stage until it's learned to crawl. So it has to finish this stage before it can move to this stage, right? And if it tries to skip, what ends up happening is, okay, I'm just gonna try to walk before I can crawl. I'm just gonna skip this stage and come over here and try and walk. But what's gonna happen? I don't have the foundation, so I'm gonna loop back. Here is where there's a block happening. Maybe I'm getting up and trying to walk. I'm realizing my legs aren't strong enough. What happens? I loop back. So I'm still in this stage, and this is just going to continue and continue until I figure out a strategy of how I can crawl so that I can develop into walking. So that is one example which mirrors itself in infinite different ways in your development journey. Crawling and walking, speaking, learning to talk and communicating, relating, having conversations. All of these stages in this unfolding spiral, which is you, this unfolding, expanding seed, which is you, these stages need to be completed sequentially before you move on. Otherwise, you just end up looping back. This is what's actually happening in a lot of people's lives. When I looked at my life and I realized that I had some issues in my relationships with women, for example, I started to dig deeper. I started to look at the underlying patterns of where that came from and what is the ultimate relationship with the feminine. It's with your mother. So I started looking at where in my journey did I not complete certain stages in my relationship with my mother, my connection with her, where did those blocks happen? And I started going back and clearing out those blocks and those programs so that I could improve that relationship, and consequently that impacted my relationships with women. It's just another example. So that's really important to understand. That is a key here, that in order to expand, we need to follow the process. We need to go through all of these stages sequentially. So as we're progressing, what is actually going on? What is happening to this unfolding, expanding seed, which we are? Well, from the very beginning, even in the womb, we are being programmed. So if you can picture, this is the embryo developing in the womb. From that very early stage, what is happening here is that there is stimulus coming in. And this is a person, for example. So even in the womb, we can pick up sounds, we can pick up vibrations, we can pick up feelings, we can actually feel what our mother is feeling when we're in the womb. And this is all beginning to install associations, okay? We hear the sound of our mother's voice, and what does it do? It gives us a sense of calm. We hear the sound of someone yelling and getting angry, or we might hear disruptive, angry sounds coming from the external world, and this is creating a sense of perhaps fear. It's well known, it's well established that a baby in the womb can experience these emotions. This is all happening very early. So this energy, which is wanting to unfold and express itself in these different stages, is already getting programmed. And a program is essentially a filter. So I want you to think of this little program here is like a lens. And it's a lens which this energy has to pass through. Okay? It's no longer just able to flow freely. It's no longer able to just express itself freely. It has to travel through this lens of hearing angry voices, or not feeling secure in my mother's womb. Okay? Little programs, subtle programs, and these begin to expand and extend after we're born. So maybe we can look at this as, this is all womb. Here's 0 when we're born, okay? And this is the flow of time. This is the flow of our development continuing on. So social programs are now coming at us in full force, because remember, our goal is to survive. So this little ego here has some inbuilt programs at the very beginning as just part of its karmic inheritance as being a human being, being born into a human body. It has all of the genetic programs at the very core level of who it is. Remember, this ego's core program is, I am separate. I exist. I am a separate being. That's what allows spirit to have a human experience, as well as all these other genetic programs which have enabled human beings to survive and go on for so many thousands of years now. So it is now seeking models. It's seeking, what is my tribe doing? Remember, this baby, which is you, is born into a social environment where it quickly has to adapt. It has to pick up the cues of its external environment, and it has to learn, how should I act so that I can be accepted by my tribe, so that I can be safe, so that I can be secure. These are very fundamental foundational lessons. It's doing that by looking out and asking, how can I be like everyone else? How can I be like everyone else? And in doing so, this baby quickly develops into an ego, okay? It quickly develops its identity by taking on all these programs, by taking on all these behavior patterns from its external environment, from mum, from dad, from sister, from brother, uncle, auntie, friends. This is the social conditioning stage, right? Social conditioning begins where the baby needs to be imprinted with the appropriate way of behaving so that it can survive. That's the first stage, social programming, social conditioning. The second part of this journey is blocking, right? Blocking. Now, blocking happens when this little baby, this little child, begins to feel certain emotions which seem to threaten its survival, right? So this baby is trying to survive. It's trying to mirror, it's trying to copy its environment. It's soaking up all these programs. In fact, it's already got all these little programs in here from the womb, from the early years of its life. And when it's born into the world, it's now got this other response available to it, which is contraction, blocking. When we say blocking, we're talking about contraction. And this is where we withdraw. This is where we make ourselves small. This is where we step back and shrink. This is a classic survival fear response, contracting. And it's commonly known as blocking in the Western world. It's a term that we tend to use. And all that this is when this energy is now starting to flow, it's becoming more complex. It's getting filtered through these programs which have been installed, right? And in fact, as this energy, which is spirit, unfolding itself, the seed expressing itself, as it's flowing through these programs, what's actually happening is this energy is being distorted, right? If you imagine this is maximum power coming through here, beginning here, fresh new baby, lots of life energy, lots of prana, lots of chi, lots of life force bursting forth. Now it's beginning to get slowed down. It's having to get filtered, and its power is just beginning to just drop a little bit as it has to go through these programs, as it has to behave this certain way in order to get love in its perception. I have to, I have to act appropriately. I have to behave well in order to get rewarded, in order to get love. I need to be a good baby. I need to cry like this, or I need to say these kind of cute sounds or make these kind of movements, and then I'll get love, right? Programs. The baby is learning how to act in order to get what it wants, and in the process, it is losing some of its energy, just very small amounts as it has to go through these programs. Now, what happens when the baby reaches a certain age? Let's say the baby's 2 years old, and all of a sudden, this energy begins to express itself. And this is the energy, again, all contained in the seed beforehand. All this energy is contained in the seed at the very beginning. It's all there. And now a stimulus triggers it. And now the baby feels angry, right? The young baby is starting to feel angry. And this new energy is emerging out of it. And what happens? Well, there is a certain condition in the family where anger is not allowed, or it's allowed but only in certain circumstances, or the baby might feel afraid in its environment. So what does it do? It doesn't feel safe enough to release anger, right? So this emotion here, which is trying to burst forth, is now shut down. If you imagine that this stage of the spiral here, this is like the leading edge. This is kind of like the conscious mind, the conscious part of the baby. It is now shutting down this energy. It's contracting and it's blocking this energy, right? Because it doesn't feel safe, or doesn't feel like it's allowed to experience this energy. So what happens? It accumulates. It starts accumulating, kind of like when your pipes in your house start to block because they haven't been cleaned for such a long time, or dust gathering on the windowsills, right? This is junk accumulating. Maybe you haven't changed your fuel filters for 6 years. It accumulates, right? The energy has to go somewhere. So where does it go? It gets stuck in the unconscious mind. This is repressed, suppressed energy. So what happens next? Well, the event passes, okay? So the baby feels this inspiration to release some anger energy. It can't. It blocks it, it contracts it, it shuts it down, and the event passes, okay? So the event has now passed, whatever stimulated that feeling of anger, and the baby has opened up the channel again. So this is open now, and the anger has passed. So all of this accumulated anger energy is still here. Maybe a little bit comes out, but just a small amount. Most of it is still stored here. So as the baby is continuing its developmental journey, here it goes, continuing, this junk, this residue is still here. This has not moved. And this is where the problems begin, right? So what the baby will usually do, or the young child, whatever it is, it will realize, oh, hey, what is this feeling I'm feeling? What's this suppressed, stuck feeling I've got inside me? I don't want to feel this. This is uncomfortable. So what does it do? It creates its own program. It creates its own label. It creates its own inner block, which says, whenever this energy comes up, I'm going to block it because it doesn't feel safe. Remember, the baby back here has gone, I don't want to feel anger because that doesn't feel safe. I don't feel safe to express this energy. So what does it do? It now puts a label on it and makes that a rule. This becomes a program. And this time, the baby has programmed itself. That's all it is. That's where it all begins. Blocked emotion, reflected on by the conscious mind, labeled, and this is where we make a decision. At this point, that's a speech bubble for the internal speech going on. The baby's going to say, I am X, Y, Z. These decisions are literally what determines the baby's relationship with this emotional energy now. And these can go into the hundreds, these little decisions, very subtle, unconscious because they're done at such a young age. But the baby's making them like that in response to this blocked energy. So the baby's saying, I am not safe to feel anger. I am vulnerable. Anger is wrong. If someone else feels angry around me, that means I'm going to get hurt. And so on and so on and so on and so on. And these begin to add up, right? This is not a one-time event. And this is not just the emotion of anger we're talking about. We're talking about dozens of different emotions, dozens of different experiences. Begins to move into the hundreds, begins to move into the thousands over the course of a lifetime. Age 3, age 4, age 5, age 6. And like on that last video I showed you, these developmental stages, they're covering different parts of the development of the personality, of the psyche, of the ego. Different stages of life have different challenges where different energies from this seed are being stimulated out of the seed to emerge out and express themselves. And now we've got social programming saying, that emotion is not appropriate. That's not how we behave around here. Children should be seen but not heard. You know, you can't act like that in public. You can't talk like that. This is how you have to talk in order to get what you want. This is how you have to treat other kids if you want to get on with them. This is how to be polite. This is how to be attractive to moving into primary school. This is how to be attractive to the opposite sex. This is how to get the favor of the teacher. On and 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 on it goes. All of it programming you on how you should behave, and all of it accumulating different levels of emotion, building up, not being released, not being expressed, and getting stored in your unconscious mind. That's becoming a bit of a mess. So, what happens next? This all adds up. This does not go away. Although you may not be conscious of this stuff, it's all in there. It is all forming you into who you are. So, let's imagine that by this time you are 7 years old, let's just say. And by age 7, these little programs literally run into the thousands. Thousands. And all of a sudden, this energy, which used to flow so freely in the baby, is now starting to stagnate. It's starting to get broken up. It's starting to lose power, right? We wonder why kids have such fantastic imaginations and then their imaginations slowly dwindle as they go through the schooling process. Well, it's because all these programs are splitting that power. They're blocking, they're creating little barriers and filaments, and the brain is getting segmented, fractured. This is really crazy stuff. The brain is literally being fractured into all of these different behavior patterns so that this natural flow is not so naturally flowing anymore. So what happens next? Here comes little 7-year-old Tommy, and this is his identity. So now Tommy identifies with all of these thousands of layers of programs. He actually believes these programs are who he is. This is where it gets scary, right? Because the moment we have an identity, what happens? Attachment. Just going to chuck that away. Attachment happens. If someone says to you, those shoes, and they're pointing to some shoes across the room which belong to someone else. If someone says those shoes are ugly and they've got nothing to do with you, do you care? No, of course not. They're not your shoes. If someone says to you, the way that you act is ugly, who you are is ugly, and they're pointing out one of these behavior patterns that you do, for example, the way you speak, that's offensive because that's who I am, right? We identify with our programs and we get attached to them. We don't want to let them go. And it includes all of this residual emotion which has been blocked. This is all still sitting in here, right? All these little fragments of blocked emotions which haven't been allowed to express themselves. This is all becoming, including the blocks, our identity, what we think of ourselves as, our self-image is emerging out of all of this. So we actually begin to form that self-image. And so now what's going on is all of this is being projected. Well, first of all of this is being forgotten. as the conscious mind, remember, the conscious mind is here on the leading edge of this spiral, okay? So the conscious mind is looking back at itself, and what can it actually see? When we're reflecting on who we are, what can we actually see? Well, we can see what happened recently. We can see things that are obvious. We can see things in our recent memory. But when it comes to things that happen way back here in the spiral, or way back here in the spiral, or way back here, where we've made decisions about who we are, right? Where we've made decisions about the way reality is. We've made decisions about how we should act in certain circumstances. For example, maybe we made a decision at 3 years old that it's not safe to express ourselves around adults or strangers, right? We made this decision unconsciously 3 years old. Now we're 7 years old. Can we see that decision? Do we remember that decision? Most likely we don't. Most likely all of that's now become unconscious. So this is where things become dangerous. This is where things become really powerful. Our programs become really powerful because we forget them. It's the craziest thing. Think about yourself right now and just reflect for a moment on the fact that throughout your entire life, you have made thousands upon thousands of these decisions about how you should behave, how you should act, and most of them have happened unconsciously, where something stimulated you to feel a certain way, you've blocked it, you've labeled it, you've given it a meaning, and now it's just part of who you are. So now, all of a sudden, you want to be someone different, and you associate yourself, let's say, you've created an identity where you see yourself as shy, or you see yourself as not intelligent, so let's just say stupid. Just go with the negative ones for now. Or let's just say you see yourself as extremely beautiful. Nice positive one. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. It's part of your identity. It's unconscious. You don't even know where it came from. You don't know what it's even based on. So that's what happens next. Our identity forms around our programming. And now what's going on, let's just clear the slate here. We've got an identity based on programs that we're not even conscious of. And now, guess what? What do we do next? We project. We project all of our programs out there. It's all happening out in the world. Because the nature of the ego is to survive. It's to maintain homeostasis. Once this identity forms, the ego wants to hold on to it. And so all of the uncomfortable stuff, all of the junk, all of the trash, all of the suppressed emotions, all of the programs that say this is how reality is, the ego can't experience it because it's repressed, it's suppressed, it's not safe to feel. At least it wasn't when I was 2 years old. This kid's now 7 or 10 or 12. So what does he do? He projects it out there. So all of this repressed anger, let's say, or perhaps all of this repressed sadness, could be any one of these different emotions. Let's say repressed sexual desire, which maybe this child wasn't allowed, it wasn't appropriate for them to express their sexuality, which is very common as children. Even though children are sexual beings, we are sexual beings from a young age, it's not really appropriate to express our sexuality in our culture until we're much older. So this gets projected out and we see other people as the bad ones. We see other people as the angry ones. We see the world as an angry place or a dangerous place because it hasn't been owned within us. It hasn't been allowed. It hasn't been expressed. It's all just repressed in here. So we project it out. We deny it. 2 steps. Denial and projection. And if you just understand this one point, right, how this mechanism works that I've just explained, you are way ahead of the game. You are way, way ahead of the game. If you can understand where your denial and projection patterns are playing out right now, you can change anything in your life. You can solve any problem, right? Just understanding how this works and clearing this out. So that's really exciting. I think that's pretty amazing. I'm just going to say that. What happens next? We've now created a reality. This is crazy, right? We've now created a reality based on our own projections. So remember back to the spiral? This is the spiral here. Filled with programs, filled with conditioning. And now here comes pure spirit wanting to have an experience through the human vessel, which is what's going on right now in your body. Spirit is expressing itself and is looking out from inside of you, inside of this vessel which you are, but it's having to go through all of these thousands of programs, right? So by the time this spirit gets to look through your physical eyes into the world outside, which you believe is the world outside, it's got this tainted image. This image, which is a projection of your own insides, filled with all of this crazy stuff, right? Perception becomes projection. So what is conditioning? Now we're coming to the answer to this question. What is conditioning? Conditioning is the accumulation of all of your programs. Conditioning is the accumulation of all of your blocked emotional energy, all of your programs, and all of your behavior patterns. So all of this leads up to you creating your reality based on what's inside of you, projecting out all the junk out into the world. And now what's going to happen? It gets crazier. It just keeps escalating. It just keeps popping. Now, this projection you've got is becoming your reality. So what happens when you project, for example, maybe this kid made a decision at 3 years old because he was abused by his mother. He makes a decision that all women are evil. That's an evil woman, right? He makes a decision that all women are evil based on his conditioning, based on his programming. Now what's going to happen is a feedback loop where he's projecting that. So what does he look for? He looks for evidence that women are evil. He notices all of the ways in which women do the wrong thing or want to use him or want to abuse him or want to take advantage of him. So maybe a lovely lady comes up to him and is kind to him. What does he do? His conditioning projects, it's just an act. His conditioning projects, she's going to use me as soon as she gets the opportunity. Feedback loop. So perception is now creating reality in this crazy, twisted mechanism. This is how it happens. This is how you're doing it right now. This is how you are perceiving the world. You're perceiving the world through your programming. And we wonder why the same patterns start to happen in our life, which leads us to the next point. All of this is a life pattern. This all adds up to a life pattern. Craziest shit. So now this is playing out in multiple different domains of life, not just relationships. This is playing out in money. This is playing out in your physical health. This is playing out in your career. This is playing out in your relationship to God, to spirit, to source. This is playing out in the way that you see the world. And let me just read to you a few of these common decisions that people make. So these are some examples of decisions that we make which end up playing out in our reality. I don't have the list, so I'm just going to rattle them off. There it is. Different decisions that we make from our conditioning could include, and I just want you to listen out for anything that might relate to you. There's definitely going to be some in here. Listen out for different ways that you've limited yourself based on conditioning. Here's some examples. Limiting decisions that we make down on that unconscious level without realizing it. Unconscious decisions. For example, money's difficult. Money's just difficult. If I want lots of money, I have to work really hard. That's a decision. Men or women are all liars, or whatever you want to put there. All out to get me, or cheats, liars, I can't trust them. Wealthy people are greedy or evil, as another example. Doctors know the best. Doctors know what's best for me. I have to trust doctors. I have to trust authority. Authority always knows what's right. People who have power, they know what's best. Decision. I'm not attractive to the opposite sex. I don't have it. I don't have what it takes. I'm not good looking enough, or I'm not comfortable in expressing myself as I am, because if I did, I'd be rejected. I'm shy, or I'm not confident. I always have accidents. I'm always late. I'm not smart. I easily get sick. It's just how I am. Perception based on programs, creating reality, feedback loop. This is how it happens. I need other people to like me before I can be happy. I have to please others to be happy. Life is all about making others happy. If I can't do that, then I can't be happy. These are all the conflicts that we're building into ourselves unconsciously as children, as teens, even as adolescents. This is all happening. I can do what I love, or I can do what makes money, but I can't do both. Conflict, program, conditioning. If I'm overweight, I'll be rejected. If I'm skinny, I'm not attractive. I need others to do it for me. I need someone else to do it for me in any domain. If I follow the rules, I'll get taken care of. It's another common one. And there are just so many. For example, white people or black people, Asian people or indigenous people are all like this. Value judgment, label. So these are all adding up to create your reality. They're all decisions, programs that are creating what you're actually going through. So where does this all lead? Okay, that's pretty crazy. That in itself is crazy, right? But where does that actually lead to? Well, these life patterns end up creating our reality, and then one day we realize that we hate our reality, or we don't like it, or we just want to change it because it's always been like this and surely there's something better, right? So here comes little Sally, who decides she wants to change her life. She saw a Tony Robbins video on YouTube and then went to one of his events, and now she's like, yeah man, I'm going to start a business, I'm going to change my life, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, I'm going to be empowered. She's all motivated, she's excited, she's ready to go. She gobbled up that orange pill. But what happens? Well, Sally now goes and starts her business, and then she realizes that she can't close deals. Every time she goes to do a pitch for her product or a service, she sabotages herself, right? Sally's so excited and so motivated to change, but every time she goes to make a big move in her business, boom, sabotage. What's going on? where is this coming from? Why am I sabotaging myself? Or maybe she goes out and starts to take on a new diet and a new fitness regime, and she's really excited. She's going for it. Week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6, sabotage. Where's that coming from? Can you guess? Well, if you've been listening, when Sally was 4 years old, her father had a terrible breakdown where he lost all of his money in a business deal. And how is this now affecting Sally? Sally has been programmed with an experience when she was 4 years old, way back out of her memory, way back here, and she decided money is evil. Or money makes people miserable, because my dad was completely miserable and the marriage fell apart. So it doesn't matter how hard Sally tries to push her business. Does not matter how many phone calls she makes, how much advertising she does, how much pushing and grinding and how much Gary Vee she watches. It don't mean shit, because she's got a program in here. So she can go up and she'll come down. She can go up and she'll come down. And apply this now to your life. Where can you see this pattern where you give it everything you've got and it doesn't matter, you just fail? Maybe you get really, really close to that finish line and then boom, it all blows apart. Or maybe, if you're one of the lucky or unlucky ones, depending on how you want to look at it, you cross the finish line, you get the goal, and you're miserable. Why? Why is that? You got a program that's telling you something's not right here. Maybe you've won on the outside, but something's not right. And this is going to bring you down. So what ends up happening with our life patterns created out of our programming is they loop, right? Sally makes $1,000 and then loses $1,200. She makes $5,000 and then maybe her relationship breaks down and she just can't run her business anymore. She makes $10,000 and then her health falls apart. The unconscious mind is 1,000 times more powerful than Sally's conscious mind can ever be. This is where it gets juicy. This is where change happens. The unconscious level. So when a crisis comes, which it inevitably will, because remember, this spirit, this beautiful, pristine, golden spirit is wanting to express itself. It's blocked with all these blocks. A crisis happens. Sally can't win at business. She has no money. She hates herself. Can't feed the kids. Whatever it may be. Boom. Opportunity. This is the opportunity for change. This is where it gets really exciting. Because now, Sally can reflect. She's like, why is it? Why is it that every time I make money, I then sabotage myself? All of these emotions from this event where her father had a financial breakdown are now emerging. These emotions have now been touched by the crisis. Let's imagine this crisis is coming in like a kamikaze plane, right? Sally's going through her life, trying to do her thing. Boom, crisis hits her. The crisis hits all of this built up emotion. All of this stored emotion in Sally's past is now being activated. This is the opportunity. This is where you can look at your own life again and go, hang on a second. Why is it that I sabotage myself? What's all this emotion that's coming to this? Why do I feel so horrible all of a sudden? Or sad, wave of sadness, or wave of anger, or wave of other emotion that's been suppressed. It's now getting triggered by life. This is the gift of life to you. This is the gift of life to me, to all of us, is that your spirit will seek out opportunities for experiences that trigger all of the blocks in your unconscious mind, because it's looking for expansion. Your spirit is not satisfied with a mediocre life where you're blocked and limited. Your spirit is programmed or its very nature, is to seek continual expansion and freedom. So it's going to bring these crises, which are just opportunities masked, into your life so these emotions can get triggered and you can deal with them. When you deal with the emotion, all of this begins to empty itself out. All these blocks, one by one, will clear themselves out and bring about your freedom, okay? If, however, I want to put a caveat here, if we deny the opportunity, if this loop happens again and again, Sally keeps sabotaging herself, realizing she's got some weird money issues, she doesn't know where they come from, but she denies them. This emotion comes up again, this anger from her childhood, 3 years old, dad lost his business and was beating mum, and marriage broke down, and horrible emotions blocked, triggered, coming up, oh God, I'm overwhelmed. And she blocks them. What is she doing? She's reinforcing the program. These emotions are not acceptable, safe, okay to feel. I'm not going to feel them. I'm going to block them. Where does this lead to? Deterioration of the body and the mind. And suddenly, over time, if this pattern's allowed to go on and on and on, it's going to lead to blocked energy, completely blocked energy, suppressed energy, which is going to lead to physical deterioration. The body starts to break down when the mind is out of harmony. We're just going to have a quick break and we'll come right back. All right, so here we are back again. If Sally keeps on blocking what life is stimulating, what life is showing her, the energy of life is going to continue coming along. No matter what we do, we are going to be triggered. These programs, these blocked emotions are going to be triggered no matter what. We've got 2 choices. We can use the opportunity to do some inner work, to discover what's going on, to where this came from, and release that energy. Or we can block it and end up sick or continuing to sabotage, physically, emotionally, and mentally compromised because we're denying the expression of our spirit. Something that I did, something that I've done, something that I've actually done on and off for years at different stages of my life. And it's horrific, it's horrible. So it's much better to do the inner work, which brings us to the next point, right? There's really just a small handful of different ways that we can do this. There's just a small handful of different ways that we can begin to clear out our psyche, our unconscious mind, which is going to change our conscious experience. Remember back to the first video, we've got the ego in the center, unconscious mind, all the programs in here, conscious experience, all of this is filtering up, all this energy is filtering up to our conscious experience, creating our reality and our life patterns. So when we realize, when we hit that crisis point, there's a few different things we can do. Depending on what we choose to do, it's going to determine how effective we're going to be at clearing out all this junk, all this karma, programming, social conditioning, self-programming, limiting decisions, limiting beliefs, limiting paradigms, negative emotions, blocked stuff, which is just creating all of this horrible shit. This crisis point is an opportunity, and at this point, we're going to start to look at how can we change this? Well, the common approach is, first of all, if we're living in the Western world, what we're going to do? We're going to go and see a psychologist, okay? This is if we're going to look at an iceberg and the different layers, this is the most power and effective. This is less power. I'm just going to say less. Bit of a scale here of what's going to be most powerful and what's going to be less powerful in clearing this out. We might go and do what society encourages us to do, which is see a doctor, right? Harmless. Let's go and get some medical help. Let's go down the medical route, medical interventions. Well, here we're going to get maybe a bit of therapy, a little bit of help. We're going to talk through some of our issues, right, from our childhood. When I was young, Dad went bankrupt and left a horrible impression on me. So we're going to hit on the conscious mind, and we're starting to look at memories. We're just starting to dip under the surface, and maybe we'll get some medication. Medication is going to put a lovely little mask over the issues, help us to just make them seem a little bit more placid, make them seem a little bit more neutral. We'll feel a little bit more neutral about the issues because there's a chemical change that's occurred. We're changing on a chemical level how those emotions that have been blocked for so many years feel. They just feel a little bit lighter, right? And that's okay. It's not fixing the issue at all. At all. It's not going to the root of the problem, which is this blocked emotional energy, limiting decisions, and the way that we see reality, right? This is deep. So what else might we do? If we're a little bit more proactive, maybe we're going to start reading, maybe we're going to pick up a Deepak Chopra book, maybe we're going to learn a bit about hypnosis. So we're going to the second level down. We're starting to get into the unconscious here. This is good. We're on a good track. And the unconscious, if we're working with a hypnotherapist, maybe we go and see a new NLP practitioner, neuro-linguistic programming, someone who works with beliefs, right? Someone who works with beliefs. Beliefs are on this level, a little bit deeper down, but not all the way. And what are they going to do? Well, if we look at our spiral again, we've got our blocked emotional energy, and then we've got our decision that we made about what that means, which is actually what becomes the program. The NLP person or the positive thinking person, maybe the Tony Robbins figure, is going to say to us, well, if we're going to change our reality, we got to change our beliefs. Okay? Everybody say aye. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a different color on the belief. We're going to put a different color. We're going to start to speak differently, think differently. Every time the negative emotion arises, we're going to just notice it and we're just going to change it. Oh, I've got a feeling right now that I'm inadequate. But you know what? I am enough. I am enough. I am enough. I am enough. I am more than enough. I am so much. I am so powerful. I'm so wonderful. Putting a different label. Conscious mind is all about the label. We're putting a different label on the program, but we're not removing it. We're not removing the built up energy. This is what gets me fired up, because I see so much ignorance in this area in our world today, and it's beginning to change, but there's still so much delusion around what it actually takes to clear out a belief at the core level, at the deepest level. We need to get rid of this emotion built up. If we change the color of the belief, we change what it looks like a bit. It don't mean shit if we still feel the same underneath, right? This is the juice we want to work with. So that's that level deeper. We're changing the filter. By the way, all of this emotional energy that's built up here over the years, this is still filtering through that label, that decision we made. For example, let's say as a child, we were scolded or shamed by a parent for being overweight or eating too much. This is where the emotion comes up, the pain, the injustice, the sadness, the rejection, feelings are all accumulating. Boom, we make a decision about what that means and we go, oh, it's because I'm not enough. So along comes NLP or hypno, where we get reprogrammed. This little program just gets changed slightly to I am enough, which is cool, but the emotion's all still there. That's what I'm talking about. That's why we need to go to the causal level, the bottom layer of the iceberg. So there are our different methods. Maybe we might even let's go a little bit deeper, right? Maybe we're a little bit more spiritually oriented and we decide, oh, hey, let's go do some ecstatic dance. Okay, so we're doing embodied work. This is really good. We're starting to get to the juice now. We might do some Reiki. We might do some plant medicine. Ooh, exotic. We might do some, maybe with some shamanic work. We might do some ecstatic dance, some body work, and so on. This is good. This is taking us closer and closer and closer to the core of the issue. However, what is this doing again on our little spiral? It's beginning to activate these emotions because the emotions are deep in the body, in the unconscious mind. It's beginning to trigger the emotions, much like a life crisis would trigger the emotions and allow some of these emotions to start coming to the surface now. However, getting to the core of the emotion on the deepest level where all of this has actually become a part of your identity takes something a little bit more. You can do it through plant medicine. You can do it through perhaps some shamanic work. It's possible. However, there is a more effective way. All right, and yes, we're going to jump into that right now and finish on that because we're going to be unpacking what this method is in greater and greater detail in videos to come. So what is this fourth way, which is going to take us to the core of the program, the core of the conditioning, the core of the limiting decision, the built up emotion, the stagnation? Because by the way, what is this stuff we're talking about? What's another name for it? These blocks. What is all of this junk? What is this crap? This is karma. We're really talking about karma. And I hope that doesn't scare your sensible Western mind away when I drop that word, but that's what we're talking about. We're talking about action, reaction. And this comes over from past lives. It comes over from our genealogy. Okay, this stuff can express itself not just from this life, but it can actually flow out of our genealogy, our genetic inheritance, or our spiritual inheritance, depending on which way you want to look at it. So how do we get to the core of this? How do we clear this stuff? This is the juice. This is going to take us to the next level, right? We do this, drum roll please, surrender, bang, surrender. This is where it's at. This is where we're going to get huge results very quickly. This is going all the way to the bottom of the iceberg. Boom, ground zero, baby. Surrender. What is surrender? Well, surrender, if I was to draw this visually, is where we intentionally, with our conscious mind, look, with a little bit of hesitation perhaps, at the emotion on that deep level, right? That accumulated emotional junk. We look at it, we witness it, we observe it, we accept it. That's the key. This emotion is only here because we've tightened ourselves, we've resisted it at a young age, right? Maybe 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, we've forgotten all about it. Then, in this inner work journey, we decide, let's go back, let's look at this, let's experience this emotion which I've avoided my whole life. Let's allow this energy to come up in its full power because I'm more powerful. The one witnessing the emotion is more powerful. The emotion is just temporary, right? We allow this to come up. We allow ourselves to go there into those places we're afraid of going. We take that journey. We take that hero's journey. Perhaps you want to call it the dark night of the soul. That's what some people have called this work. Shadow work, essentially, is what it is. Looking at the shadows in the darkest part of our unconscious or our soul. bringing that stuff up. Surrender is being with these emotions without trying to change them at all, until after a certain amount of time, when we've witnessed them, this accumulated energy will run out. There's a limit. There's only so much of this energy in here. Once this has all been surrendered, this spiral is now free. This spiral is empty. Empty in the sense of without conditions. So this pure energy which you are can now flow uninhibited. And this is now a happy person. What is the result of surrender? What actually begins to happen in our life when we surrender, when we allow? We're now uninhibited. All these programs are clear. We have a straight shot at whatever we want to do. The liberation current going up is clear, and the manifestation current coming down into our body is clear. We are now woke as fuck. Let's just say that. We've emptied out all of that junk. We're free, we're clear. What kind of emotions are flowing out of us now? Joy, peace, love, flowing naturally, emanating from the deepest part of who we are. Not just some external pretense that we put on to feel better. It's emanating out of our true self. This is where it's some seriously next level stuff. So here we're going to unlock dormant talents that have been suppressed our whole life. Creative abilities are going to start emerging spontaneously. People are going to start to seek us out and want to be around us because the energy we're emanating is so pure and clean and so vibrant. Life goals are going to come together with ease, are going to be achieved with ease. Synchronicity is going to start happening because we're not just aligned within ourselves. I hope you understand this. This is spirit. This is the animating force of the universe. When we become a clean vessel, when we've purified ourselves, now starting to speak, sound like a lot of religious language, right? But don't get lost in that. When we clear out our junk, our blocks, our programs, we create a clear stream for spirit to flow out of us. And this is where harmony, union, effortless synchronicity, spontaneous events occurring that support us in our journey. There's no more internal resistance. Now we're playing on a whole new level. So this is the result, okay? We began this video looking at how conditioning, programming, and these limitations occur. And now we're finishing on how to clear this out, which is the path of surrender, which, by the way, utilizes, surrender isn't just this one little thing which we do down here, and we can't do body work, and we can't do Reiki or NLP or psychology, or we can't take drugs or plant medicine or whatever it is. Letting go is like the foundation that we use, and then we can incorporate all these other practices, we can bring them in the context of surrender. Surrender is where the power is at. Surrendering our resistance to what is and just allowing it to be. So we're going to dive into that in future videos. I hope you're excited for that. I hope you got a ton of value and insight from this video. Please pop all your questions down below. Hit the like button for me. Share this with a friend. Drop me your comments. And get excited for the next episode where we're going to be going even deeper into this stuff. How to use the mechanisms of surrender, and a few other different topics which are really going to support you on this journey of clearing out your junk. So one more thing that you can do is just examine now, after having watched this video, where are those patterns for me? Where are those recurring life patterns? Just choose one area that's bugging you, that you're ready to take on, you're ready to change. Where is that pattern? And start to ask yourself in your journal, just start to write these questions down. Where does this pattern come from? Where does this pattern come from? and start to get in tune with the emotion, because the emotion is the key. Once you can tap into the emotion and you can begin to surrender it, that's where your progress is going to be very rapid. The emotion. Where's the life pattern that I want to work on? Where did it come from? What are the emotions underneath it? And am I willing and ready to start facing them, to start experiencing them? That's going to bring you the freedom. So thank you again for watching this video. Looking forward to seeing you on the next one, and I'll speak to you soon.